They say no one dreams in novice anymore. And if you do, you don't tell anyone. That's the first thing you learn growing up in the city. Not the math, not the rules of the arcology, not the names of the officials. You learn fear, quiet, muffled, crawling fear like something is always watching. Because it is. Surveillance isn't hidden here. It's the wallpaper, the ceiling, the street lights, your own reflection. And every night, when the sky dims to artificial twilight, you take your dream suppressant, the little blue pill. Except, what happens when you don't? Eli Turner was just 16 when he forgot to take his dose. A simple mistake. Or maybe something more. A skipped pill that opened a door that was never meant to exist. That night, he dreamed, and everything changed. It started with a forest deep green, rustling, breathing. He was running barefoot on moss, chasing laughter that sounded like his mother's, though she'd been gone for years. The trees parted, and he saw the moon, but not the moon projected by the city's holograms. No, this one was real, raw, imperfect, cratered and pulsing with a light that felt warm. When he woke up, he was crying, not from fear, but from something else. Something like remembering. But remembering what? Eli stumbled to the bathroom, blinking in the sterile fluorescence. He stared at himself. Pale skin, regulation haircut, barcode tattoo on the left wrist. Same as always. But inside something was different. Like a tiny ember had caught fire. For the first time in his life, he had felt something that wasn't engineered. He didn't report it. Of course not. Dreams are classed as neurological contamination. Level 2 infraction. You get flagged. You get questioned. You disappear. That's how Novus works. But Eli's dream didn't go away. The next night, it returned, this time deeper. He was underwater, but breathing, floating past ruins that pulsed with symbols he almost understood. A whisper echoed through the current, "You've seen the lie." He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, and afraid, not of the dream but of what it meant. Why had he never felt wonder before? At school, nothing made sense anymore. His classmates were blank-eyed, rehearsed, every answer delivered with robotic precision. The same tone, the same words. Their gazes never lingered on the windows, because outside was nothing but concrete and white light. And then there was Ava. She wasn't like the others. She didn't speak much, but her eyes, they flickered, as if something inside her was resisting. Quietly, that day, during simulated ethics class, Eli dropped his pill under the desk. He didn't pick it up. Ava noticed, didn't say a word, but at the end of the period, she slipped him a note. 3 words, "You're not alone." His heart raced. He burned the note after memorizing it. He didn't know what this meant, but it was the first real message he'd received in his life. That night, he didn't just skip the pill. He flushed it. The dream that came was longer, richer. He saw himself in a city ancient, alive, humming with color and noise. Children were drawing on walls. Music floated in the air, and everyone was laughing, free. Then, a sudden shadow passed over the sky. Sirens wailed. People scattered. A silver tower rose in the distance, blinking with a red eye. His chest tightened. He heard a voice again, louder this time. "They erased it, but it remembers you." Eli woke with a name on his tongue one he had never heard, but somehow knew Solace. What was Solace? The next day, Ava approached him in the cafeteria. No words, just a glance. And then, a whisper after lights out. "East Wing, storage hatch 7C. He waited until the dorms powered down, then slipped through the halls like a ghost. His pulse thundered. Cameras scanned lazily overhead. He reached the hatch. Ava was already there. She looked different, eyes sharper, more alive. Inside the hatch was a tunnel, old, dusty, forgotten by the system. Ava lit a small lantern. "This used to be maintenance," she said. "Before the rewriting." "The what?" She looked at him, searching. "You really don't know?" Eli shook his head. "They didn't build Novus from scratch," she whispered. "They buried the old city underneath, and they made us forget." It sounded insane, but something in his gut twisted. The dreams, the voices, the feeling of familiarity, like echoes from another life. Ava handed him a worn notebook. Illegal, obviously. Paper wasn't even manufactured anymore. "Keep it secret. Write everything you dream." "They're not just dreams, Eli. They're memories." Memories. The world tilted. If that was true, if what he saw at night had once been real, then the city he lived in was a lie. He started writing. Every night, filling pages with symbols, images, sounds, things that made no sense but felt True. And the more he dreamed, the more cracks he saw in reality. Posters on walls glitching for a millisecond. Guards blinking too slowly, like frames missing in a video. A man on the tram with eyes too perfect, who vanished when Eli blinked. The world around him began to shimmer at the edges. The government called it harmony, the perfect state of peace. No war, no hunger, no chaos. But what is peace when it's wrapped in silence and sedation? When every emotion is numbed, and every instinct suppressed? One night, Ava took him deeper into the tunnels. There, in a forgotten control room, they met others. 6 of them. Each had skipped the pill. Each had dreamed. Each remembered pieces of something lost. Together, they formed what they called the Wake. It wasn't a rebellion. Not yet. More like a whisper, a breath, but one that could become a storm. They compared notes. Dreams of fire and gardens. Cities of glass and birds that spoke in riddles. Names faint, repeating solace. Meridian. The pulse. None of it in the system. None of it explainable. And then came the night Eli dreamed of the chamber. He stood before a massive vault beneath the city. A door sealed with codes and lights. On the walls, murals faded depictions of people dreaming, their eyes glowing, connected by threads of light. And above it all, a phrase, carved in ancient script: to dream is to remember. To remember is to awaken. He awoke with tears in his eyes and one goal burning in his mind: find the chamber, unlock it. But he wasn't the only one paying attention. Soon after, his ID glitched. His school schedule changed. His meals arrived late. Minor, almost invisible errors, but enough to make him wonder, had they noticed? One evening, a man in a gray coat followed him from school. Eli ducked into alleys, climbed fire escapes, and finally lost him. Or so he thought. That night, the Wake's meeting was interrupted. Sirens, flash grenades, screams. They came in black suits with silver masks. The sleepers. Ava grabbed his arm. Run. They fled into the deeper tunnels. Eli's heart pounded. He heard the others behind him shouting, scattering. He didn't know who made it out. They didn't look back. That was the night Eli stopped being a boy and became something else. From that point on, it was survival. He lived underground, moving, hiding, dreaming, writing, and with every vision, he got closer to the truth. Solace was real. It had been the name of the old city. Before Novus, before the rewriting, a place where dreams weren't illegal, where people still felt, loved, created. But it had been destroyed, not by war, but by fear. Fear of chaos, of unpredictability, of pain. So they built Novus and erased everything that made life real. The rewriting was not just a policy. It was a neural reset. They reprogrammed memory, history, identity. But the dreams, they were echoes the system couldn't kill, buried in the subconscious, waiting for someone to listen. Eli was no longer alone. Across the city, more and more began to skip their pills, quietly, secretly, and they dreamed, they remembered, and they searched. The chamber was real too, and if they found it, maybe, just maybe, they could wake the whole city up. They say truth hides in silence, but in Novus, silence is a weapon, a cage, a slow suffocation wrapped in soft light and clinical perfection. Eli had seen the other side now. He couldn't unsee it, couldn't go back, and neither could the others. Even though the Wake had scattered, a signal had been lit. In flickers and fragments, people were remembering. Teachers paused mid-lesson, staring blankly at the wall. A bus driver broke protocol to hum a tune no one taught him. A child drew a sun, not the sterile white orb on the ceiling, but a fiery, yellow chaos like from Eli's dreams. The system was faltering, and it knew. That's when the broadcast changed. They didn't say dreams directly, of course. That word was erased from public language. Instead, the screen said things like, thought integrity maintains harmony, or abnormal patterns must be reported, and more chillingly, love your mind, clean your mind. But Eli didn't want a clean mind. He wanted the truth. In all its mess and color and chaos, Ava reconnected with him weeks later. She had bruises. Her voice was harder, but her eyes still defiant. They've taken Cam, she said, and Rhea, members of the Wake, gone. Do you think they're alive? Eli asked. I don't know, but I know where they might be. She handed him a map, hand-drawn, stolen from an old network node buried under District 12. It showed the layers beneath Novus: infrastructure, service routes, abandoned labs, and there, at the center buried under layers of forgotten corridors was A place marked only by a symbol, a spiral, the chamber, according to the legends whispered in dreams. It was built before Novus, a safeguard, a repository, not just of knowledge but of memory, the last sanctuary of solace. Getting there meant crossing zones no one dared enter, surveillance-free sectors, not because the system couldn't monitor them, but because it didn't want to. Zones of glitch, of error, places where the rewriting hadn't fully worked. They called it the Drift. Ava and Eli ventured there with nothing but a pack of rations, the notebook, and a broken compass that spun wildly whenever they neared the spiral symbol. The drift felt like stepping into someone else's mind. Buildings half-formed, street signs written in dead languages, holograms flickering between ads and poetry, and in the distance, always whispers. One night, they camped in what used to be a subway station. Moss grew on the walls. A tree had sprouted through the ceiling. I dreamed of this place, Eli whispered. So did I, Ava said. They sat in silence, two ghosts in a forgotten world. But in that moment, they felt more alive than ever. The next morning, they found it, a steel hatch buried under dirt and vines. On its surface, the same symbol, the spiral. It opened with a sound like a long exhale. Inside, stairs. Endless, winding stairs. Their lights flickered on as they descended. The air smelled like dust and ozone. The walls were lined with screens, blank at first. Then, slowly, images began to appear. Memories, not digital, not files, but real, living memories. A child's birthday, a woman laughing in the rain, a protest, a song sung by thousands, a couple holding hands under fireworks. Eli stood frozen. He was crying again. Why would they erase this? He asked. Ava touched one of the screens. It pulsed under her palm. Because it was dangerous, she said. It made people free. At the bottom of the stairwell stood the chamber. Circular, vast. Its walls curved inward, lined with glowing threads, memories encoded like DNA. In the center, a pedestal, and on it, a sphere, pulsing softly with light, the heart of solace. Ava stepped forward. But the moment she did, alarms shrieked to life. They weren't alone. Sleepers poured into the chamber. Silent, precise, faces covered, guns raised. Eli reached for the sphere. Ava screamed. No, but it was too late. The moment his fingers touched it, the world shattered. A blast of light engulfed them. Not heat, not force, but memory. He saw it all. The rise of solace, the invention of dream sharing, the collective consciousness, a world where people could connect through visions, through feeling, through story. Then the turning, a virus, not of the body, but of the mind, one that caused mass dreaming. Too much emotion, too much unpredictability, riots, collapse. The government seized control. The rewriting began. They didn't destroy solace. They buried it under concrete and control. And now, Eli had awakened it. The chamber rebooted. The threads along the walls flared with golden light. The sleepers staggered, some falling to their knees. Their masks flickered, revealing faces. Young, lost. One of them dropped his weapon. I remember, he whispered. The others looked around, disoriented, confused, terrified. The heart of solace was broadcasting. Not data, not commands, but dreams. Across every neural net, every implant, every suppressed mind, the dream returned to the people. In the city above, screens shattered. People collapsed, weeping, smiling, screaming, remembering. A grandmother sat up in bed and gasped, "My child." A teacher stopped mid-lecture and sang. A young boy drew the spiral on a wall. Novus had cracked, but not all welcomed the awakening. Back on the surface, the Chancellor activated Protocol 9, a neural wipe, a city-wide purge. If they couldn't contain the dream, they'd erase everything. The countdown began. 3 hours. Eli and Ava had one choice: shut down the mainframe, or lose it all. They raced through the tunnels, using the map from the chamber. The mainframe was deep under the Ministry of Thought, a fortress, a mind prison. They slipped in through the underlevels, dodging drones, avoiding scanners. The deeper they went, the louder the hum. Like the city itself was trembling. Inside the core chamber, they found it, a black obelisk, cold, humming with static. Ava placed her hand on it. We can't just destroy it. We have to rewrite it. How? With dreams, she said. She uploaded the encoded threads from the chamber. Memory by memory, feeling by feeling. The mainframe resisted. Lights flickered. Sirens howled. But the code held. When the countdown hit 0, nothing happened. Instead of wiping minds, the system rebooted. But this time, with everything restored. Novus remembered, and in that moment, everything changed. The silence was broken. The world didn't end, but it didn't stay the same either. In the hours after the reboot, Novus became something unrecognizable. A city in freefall, shaken awake from its sterile slumber. People poured into the streets, disoriented, overwhelmed, but alive in a way they had never been before. Some screamed, some laughed, some dropped to their knees and wept. You could hear it, the sound of memory flooding back. Songs once banned were hummed, forgotten names were shouted, and all across the city, dreams returned. Uncontrolled, raw, terrifying, beautiful. For many, it was too much. Hospitals filled with citizens experiencing memory whiplash. Entire families rediscovering tragedies they had buried for years. Love lost, parents erased, children remembered only in dreams. And yet, even amid the chaos, something miraculous began to happen. People began to create again. Graffiti bloomed on gray walls. Music spilled from open windows. Strangers embraced on street corners. The soul of solace long buried was blooming through the cracks of Novus like weeds through concrete. But the government didn't collapse overnight. The council, what remained of it, declared the event an attack. A psychological bioterror event, they called it. They blamed rebels, hackers, dream extremists. They denied the rewriting ever happened. But the people weren't listening anymore, because now, they remembered, and memory is revolution. Eli and Ava became symbols. Not because they wanted to. They stayed hidden, moving through the ruins of bureaucracy, helping people adjust, recover, understand what had been taken from them. The chamber became a sanctuary again. Dreamers gathered there each night, not just to sleep, but to share, to connect. The dreams were no longer private, they were bridges. Wounds were opened, yes, but they were also healed. Together, Eli dreamed of his mother again. This time, not just her face but her voice, her warmth. He remembered how she used to sing to him, softly, just before the pill started. A melody from the old world. Now, he hummed it to others, passing it on. But as peace began to grow in the cracks of the old system, a darker truth loomed beneath the surface. Not all dreams were beautiful. Some were twisted, corrupted, echoes of trauma, pain, rage. The longer people dreamed freely, the more unstable the collective subconscious became. Nightmares started spreading not just through individuals, but through groups. Whole neighborhoods waking up screaming, recounting the same horrific visions. They called it the dream sickness, and no one knew where it came from. Some said it was the cost of waking up. Others believed it was a virus planted long ago by the system as a failsafe, a final defense. But Eli, he had another theory. What if, he said one night to Ava, the nightmares are parts of ourselves we were never allowed to process? The pain they erased didn't vanish, it just festered in the dark. She looked at him, brow furrowed. And now it's bleeding out. Exactly. So they did something radical. They built a space called the archive, not for suppression, but for confrontation. People came to speak their darkest dreams aloud, to name them, face them. And somehow, in the naming, in the telling, the sickness faded, because sometimes, the only way out of a nightmare is through it. Not everyone believed in this path. Some factions emerged, those who wanted to return to order, to silence, who missed the numbness, who claimed that dreaming was a disease that needed to be cured. They called themselves the White Assembly, polished, logical, efficient. Their motto, emotion is entropy. They didn't want to erase dreams again. No, they wanted to control them. They proposed dream regulation protocols, mandatory mapping, state-approved dream content, filters to ensure harmony. A new version of the old lie, wrapped in the language of safety, and disturbingly, many agreed. Because freedom is frightening, Eli faced one of their leaders during a public forum, a televised debate. The man was sharp, calm, persuasive. He spoke of order, peace, security, of shielding children from nightmares, of preventing cognitive terrorism. Eli didn't argue. He told a story of the night he dreamed for the first time, of the moss, the forest, the laughter, of the moon. He spoke of his mother's voice, the fear, the beauty, the unbearable truth of being fully alive. And then he asked a question: what kind of world are we building, if the price of peace is our humanity? The silence that followed was louder than any applause. The White Assembly lost favor, not immediately, but the tide had turned. Because once you've tasted reality, even its bitter parts, you don't want the illusion back. Not truly. Years passed. Novus transformed not into utopia, but into something real. People still hurt, still struggled, but they did it awake. Children were taught to dream and to understand their dreams. Art and memory became part of healing. The chamber became a school, a temple, a seed. Ava and Eli never became rulers. They refused titles. They were simply guides, listeners, dreamers among dreamers. But there was one mystery left, solace, not just the name of the old city, but a whisper that continued to echo in Eli's dreams. He began to wonder, what if Solace was more than a city? What if it was an idea, a collective memory of a better way of being, one that exists in all people, sleeping just beneath the surface, waiting for someone, anyone, to dig deep enough. To listen. One night, Eli stood on the rooftop of the tallest building in Novus. The stars above him were real now, no longer simulations. He looked down at the city, the lights, the chaos, the art, and he smiled, because even though the road ahead was long and uncertain, the silence was over. The people were dreaming again, and this time they were wide awake. Years after the fall of rewriting, children no longer feared sleep. They were taught to see dreams as stories their minds told to survive, to feel, to remember. And in those dreams, they began building something new. Not a new city, not a new system, but a new way of being, a way where the mind was not a battlefield, but a garden. Untamed, messy, beautiful. In schools, students shared their dreams aloud, not for judgment, but for connection. Therapists didn't ask, "What's wrong with you?" They asked, "What is your dream trying to say?" The old systems fought back, of course. They always do. Somewhere, in shadowed corners, remnants of the assembly still worked to perfect emotional antivirus, old code, old fears, waiting for a moment of weakness. But something fundamental had changed. The people had tasted truth, and truth, once felt in the marrow, cannot be unseen. Eli aged quietly, unremarkably, not as a hero, but as a gardener of minds. He taught, he listened, he watched entire generations rise up without the scars he carried. Sometimes he would walk through the drift, now a memorial. Trees had overtaken the gray. Children played in ruins where cameras once watched every blink. Graffiti bloomed on old towers like wildflowers. Once, a girl asked him, did dreams really used to be illegal? He smiled. They were. She looked confused. But why? He thought for a moment, then answered, because when people dream freely, they stop obeying quietly, and that was it. The revolution wasn't in the explosions or the code. It wasn't in the chamber or the debates. It was in simple acts of remembrance, in children being allowed to imagine dragons, oceans, and lost cities without fear. It was in a mother rocking her baby and whispering, "Tell me what you saw while you slept." It was in the scarred man who finally allowed himself to cry. It was in forgiveness and in stories, because that was the real power dreams always held, not just to escape, but to process, to heal, to connect. We think of dreams as fiction, but sometimes they carry the most honest truths we have. In the end, solace was never a place. It was a choice, a refusal to numb, a defiance of silence, a rebellion written in color, in song, and feeling. Eli died many years later, peacefully, dreaming, they say. Just before his heart stopped, he smiled, and in his final vision, he stood once more in that forest, beneath a moon that wasn't gray, but glowing gold. The trees whispered a language older than time, and somewhere in the distance laughter, familiar, free. The screen fades to black, and now, maybe you're wondering, what are your dreams trying to tell you? Have they been silenced? And if so, isn't it time to listen again? Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the world isn't rebellion, or fire, or even truth. It's the simple act of remembering. Don't forget, subscribe for more stories that wake something in you.